Three, two, one.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Stoffer, and I'm going to be talking to you about anterograde amnesia. So anterograde amnesia is the inability to recall new memories after amnesia has occurred. Some of the causes are drug-induced, alcohol-induced, brain injury, heart attack, oxygen deprivation, epileptic attack, and an emotional disorder like depression. One of the main causes of anterograde amnesia that I found was really interesting was Korsakoff syndrome. And Korsakoff syndrome is a neurological disorder caused by alcohol abuse. It causes a thiamine deficiency and results in a reduction of the thalamus and the hippocampus. Korsakoff syndrome can cause retrograde, anterograde, and global amnesia. It affects episodic memory, which is facts and events, executive memory, which is like planning and multitasking, and prospective memory, which is self-initiated realization of time management. And the main type of memory we're going to be talking about related to Korsakoff syndrome is prospective memory. And there's been past studies conducted that basically concluded that amnesia patients with Korsakoff syndrome had a much more impaired prospective memory than non-amnesia alcoholics. And so the study I found that we're going to mostly focus on today is a study to just actually kind of back up the past study. So the hypothesis is examining prospective memory in amnesia patients by comparing patients with executive function deficits with amnesia to patients who only have executive function deficits. And the patients in the latter half are going to be the alcoholic patient controls, and the patients at the beginning of that hypothesis are going to be the ones with Korsakoff syndrome that have amnesia. But basically an executive function is mental skills that help carry out tasks. So executive function and prospective memory kind of go hand in hand. So the materials of this were 25 patients, 21 men, 4 women, all with Korsakoff syndrome and amnesia. We had 23 patients, 19 men, 4 women, and these were the alcoholic controls. And so the methods of this. So patients were given an ongoing memory task. And that's in bullet point 1. In this ongoing memory task, 2 black and white line drawings were given, and the participants were asked to click on a mouse when 2 drawings were a part of the same categories. And I have a picture right here. This is what it kind of looked like. And so the participants were then given a prospective memory task, and then they were asked to perform both tasks simultaneously. And then they had a 5-minute distraction test performed, and then a prospective memory test was given, and then a 5-minute break was given, and then a prospective memory test was given, and then a distraction test was given. During the prospective memory tasks in bullet point 2, 5, and 7, salience cues were presented. So we had low salience cues presented, which the participants were asked to press a certain key whenever a picture of a cat in the same format as the ongoing task was present on the screen. So basically this is depicted in figure A. So if you can see that there's a cat and the background is the same as all the other, it's just a black background, it's the same as the other images. So that was considered the low salience cue. And if they saw the cat, they were supposed to click on the mouse. And so then we had high salience cues. And these were participants were asked to press a certain key whenever a picture of a dog surrounded by a different colored frame was present. And so as you can see in diagram B, there's a dog at the bottom half, and that's just basically showing that the order of it is different than the rest of them. And so basically these salience cues, so the high salience cue in figure B is going to represent a low executive load. So it's easier for the patients to recognize that it's different versus the low salience cue, which is going to be a high executive load. So it's going to be harder for these amnesia patients to recognize to remember they're supposed to click on the cat because the backgrounds are blended. So the results of this. So individuals with Korsakoff syndrome presented lower prospective memory in the presence of salience cues than their alcoholic non-amnesia counterparts. The 23% hit on low salience cues while 45% hit on high salience cues. This resulted in the support of the hypothesis that prospective memory relies heavily on executive function. So there's some mechanisms behind anterograde amnesia that are pretty interesting. So there's some previously proposed theories about anterograde amnesia. And one of these is that anterograde amnesia patients are unable to pass information from short-term memory and then to long-term memory. So they're not able to retain short-term memory and convert it into long-term memory. And then another one was that anterograde amnesia patients could store new memories, but they couldn't access them unless retrieval cues were present that differentiated the item being retrieved from the other items in the stored memory. But both of these were proved wrong because procedural memory is still intact in amnesia patients, and it's stored in long-term memory. So they can access certain types of memory, like procedural memory, but, so that's kind of what will lead us into this next study. So this next study I found was called Profound Retroactive Interference in Anterograde Amnesia. So the hypothesis was basically what is interfering in the memory of anterograde amnesia patients, and more specifically investigating whether highly dissimilar material presented after the learned material would interfere with the memory of amnesia patients. So the materials and methods. So 10 amnesia patients were used, 4 closed head injuries, 2 anoxia caused by cardiac arrest, 1 birth anoxia, 1 stroke, and 2 limbic encephalitis patients were used. And then we have 10 control patients, and both of the amnesia patients and the control patients both had 12-year education. So the methods of this. So there was 4 trials presented, and the participants were presented with a story and were instructed to immediately recall the story. And so after they were instructed to recall the story, there was a 10-minute delay, and then participants were asked to recall the story after the delay. And so the 10-minute delay was either going to be filled or unfilled. So if it was unfilled, the participants were asked to rest in the room while the experimenter left and dimmed the lights. They just got to relax for the 10 minutes. While if it was a filled 10-minute delay, then there was a tone detection task given. And basically this is 10 minutes of a soundtrack of a distant waterfall. And there was 50 piano notes randomly placed throughout the tone detection task. And the loudness of these notes varied, and they were directed to click on the left mouse whenever they heard the piano note. And so in trials 1 and 2, the patients were not informed that they would be asked to recall the passage after the delay. And so they did this under incidental conditions. And then in trials 3 and 4, they were informed that there would be immediate recall following the delay, and this was under intentional conditions. So the results of this. So as you can see in the diagram, there were 7 able to recall the material after an unfilled delay. So as you can see, the white boxes are the unfilled delay, and then 1 patient was able to recall some material after the filled delay. And so what is this telling us? That these findings do support retroactive interference hypothesis, and more specifically, the post-learning stimuli does not need to be similar to the already retained information to cause memory interference in anterograde amnesia patients. So they're basically saying that when new material is being presented to these patients, like the tone detection task, it'll interfere with them their ability to remember even short-term things like the story. So that is what happened. Thank you.